First of all, it's great to meet you, man. Like I said, I've been watching your podcasting. The RX Radio is really fun, man.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like I've definitely seen Generation Iron take its place in the fitness industry. So it's cool to kind of see like the little clips and see kind of behind the scenes a little bit now. It's neat.
Absolutely, man. Well, how did you get into it? I know you're a chiropractor, right? You basically like a real doctor that got into the fitness, and now you're podcasting as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got into fitness through sports. I think as most people do. Played hockey in Canada growing up, and that kind of shaped the career path a little bit. And was going to training at a young age, a younger-ish age. Got into personal training pretty young, and just didn't want to train forever. Liked the idea of one-on-one interaction. Thought like clinical practice would be pretty cool. Went to chiro school in San Francisco Bay Area, California, and basically one thing led to the next. Got into like powerlifting. Had like a really good first coach, arguably one of the best powerlifters of all time, Dan Green, and met a few like influential people as far as the fitness stuff goes. Used to train with a dude named Craig Capurso, who's like one of the early men's physique competitors. Switched into classic physique at the first John Lindsay show. That kind of just introduced me to like fitness as a job, or like the fitness industry as a potential thing that you could work in. And simultaneously, I started the podcast. I worked at Apple as a chiropractor. I was working at Stanford as a strength coach, and just started talking online, and I haven't shut up in 6 years. And here we are, man. So I mean, that's the Coles Notes version of it. But yeah, a little bit of like powerlifting, a little bit of strength conditioning, some stuff on the clinical side, some really lucky breaks, and some right people. So yeah.
How you like being a chiropractor, man? I mean, it's definitely I feel like it's a great thing to be able to know how to do, man.
It's the one career where people are okay telling you the really bad experience they've had. Like, imagine if it was like a race of people. Like, I'm from a place in Newfoundland. I'm from a place in Canada called Newfoundland. And it's like, I always thought, like, when I tell people I'm a chiropractor, is one of two responses. It's like, it's very hot or cold. It's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love my chiropractor. Like, all right, yeah, cool, whatever. Or it's, oh my God, I had this cousin and he like went to see a chiropractor and they like made him sign all this stuff. I was like, why are you telling me this? Like, I don't care. But it's if someone's a dentist and they introduce like, oh, what do you do? I'm a dentist. They're not going to be like, oh my God, my cousin went for a root canal and he died. It's like, all right, that's cool. You're a dentist. So it has a weird social stigma to it, which I don't care about as much anymore. It's a good tool to have, especially working with like an athletic population. So I can take someone straight from like passive on the table and I know sort of how to move them, but I also can take them under a squat rack or onto a field. And I also know how they should move themselves. So it's a good vantage point that's proved itself very useful in like an athletic sphere. Not to say that it's not useful in a general population, setting, but I've definitely used it to my advantage to like differentiate what I do on like the athletic training side. But I mean, if nothing else, it teaches you very deep levels of like anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, biochemistry. So it definitely has its ups and downs, but definitely a net positive for sure.
Because you're also a performance coach, right? You actually
Yeah.
help people, talk about that as well. What goes into that?
Yeah, so because my strength and conditioning background was with Stanford University rugby, and the Bay Area in California is a very high concentration of professional sports. Like there's the 49ers, there was the Raiders, the Oakland Athletics, the San Francisco Giants, the 49ers, the Golden State Warriors, and the San Jose Sharks. I kind of got pigeonholed a little bit into like football and rugby. So worked with some kids at a younger age that made it into the league. And then once they were in the league, they kind of told their friends. So a lot of what I do in that part of my business is like off season. So I work a lot with athletes in the off season, just trying to rehabilitate injuries, really just like manage load. Like the NFL season is such a brutal schedule, especially for those teams that make it deep into the playoffs and, those that make it to the finals. So a lot of it's you fly in, you just kind of hang out for a few weeks, train and treat, and just kind of see where they're at. And, I'll do a few like touch points throughout the week or throughout the year. Sorry. So we usually work together early off season, set the program for the off season, and it's like daily communication with them. And then late off season going into like OTAs or training camp, work with them again for another few weeks. Then, depending on the strength coach that they work with in season and how open they are to outside influence and like the level of skill of the player, I'll have like varying amounts of oversight of the exercise programming week over week during the season. So that's really, I mean, that's like kind of the long and short of it, but it's a lot of, at that level, it's load management. It's understanding the stress of the game on Sunday or on Thursday. And then it's understanding how can we still push progress forward without flying too close to the sun. Like what is the stress of, on a linebacker versus a running back versus a kicker versus a quarterback? Like what do they need individually week over week to still progress, but not to burn out, not to overload, not to get injured?
Seeing a chiropractor, right, to get adjusted, for example, right? Like, how often should somebody do? Like, I only go if something hurts, honestly. Like, what do you recommend? Like,
I
especially like
don't.
if you're lifting, like, what do you
Yeah,
recommend?
that's the thing, man. Like I don't really have a concise answer for that because it's so practitioner specific. Like I think, a good practitioner is like a shepherd. Like it could try to show you a path of where to go. So, if you have an acute injury, you're probably going to have to see a chiropractor more often. And there's like okay research depending on the injury. But if at some point in those visits around an injury, there isn't a conversation about how to mitigate the risk of injury moving forward, whether that's like a conversation around technique, a conversation around load management or indicators of fatigue or how to offset fatigue, then there's almost like, I don't want to say no point, but I'd definitely be like a little bit more hesitant to give a blanket statement because you're not going to get a blanket treatment because, chiropractors have such a vast scope of practice that from individual to individual with the same problem, you're going to go in and get very different solutions, which can be great because it allows that variability of scope to maybe have some really forward thinking, intelligent people look at your issue, your injury, and be able to like program and think critically about how it is you arrive there. But say what you want about conventional medicine. If I go, I know what I'm going to get when I go into a doctor's office. Now, sometimes it's, for better, for worse, at least it's consistent, which I think is one thing people are always hesitant with when approaching manual therapies of any kind, is the relative inconsistency, especially at the level of the chiropractor, of what the treatment's going to look like. Like, some people are like, oh, my chiropractor does this thing with like a little gun and then it just pop, pop, pop. And it's like, all right, well, that's called an activator and you're 240 pounds and that probably is not going to do sweet all. And it's like because there's this weird like YouTube, TikTok chiropractors that are like Jean-Claude Van Damme people's heads off with towels. I'm like, yo, that's probably not a thing either. I probably shouldn't do that stupid thing. I would avoid that. So, we all have the same title, but we definitely do very different jobs.
What about that
So
crazy, weird? I'm sure you've seen it before. The bodybuilders get that. It's like a massage with this metal stick. What is that
yeah,
called?
so that's called instrument assisted soft tissue
They
mobilization.
scream during
Um,
that. They literally scream when it's happening.
And see, so, and here's and I don't want to say the problem, but bodybuilders get tied into what's called a dose dependent relationship, right? If some is good, more is better. And we've seen this play out to the detriment over the last 6 months, it seems. And like we all fall victim to it, man. Like when I first started training, it was like, wait, creatine can make me bigger. So if 20 grams is good, 40 grams must be better. It's like, you're an idiot, right? But obviously, like I was a 16-year-old kid. But I think with the idea is, with this instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization, which is so popular, is that we get it stuck in our head that this implement can break up scar tissue. And bodybuilders assume they have scar tissue for whatever nefarious or not nefarious reasons. And it's like, look, if you actually study like the formation and the tensile strength of collagen and you understand how scar tissue works and how strong scar tissue is and how strong it has to be, someone doing this with a Louisville Slugger is not going to break up scar tissue. And if it is, you got a lot bigger problems because the pounds per square inch pressure that it takes to actually structurally deform scar tissue is so much that if you were to effectively do it, you would also effectively break the bone underneath whatever scar tissue you were likely trying. So this superficial scraping thing, there's a mechanism to it. It's probably something at the neurological level, maybe slightly vascular, but our nervous system responds to inputs of heat, it responds to inputs of deep pressure, it responds to inputs of skin stretch. All of these are different stimulus that our nervous system ultimately adapts to. And the instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization affords a patient those stimuli in a very concentrated treatment setting. But I think a lot of people get it in their head, a very rough idea and understanding and an incorrect one of what scar tissue is, and then they think about this very mechanical model. They go, oh, I'm going to get someone to go break it up. It's like, you better hope they don't, because if they do, you're also going to be breaking majority of the bones in your body. So I think it's a misappropriated treatment technique because people don't understand like the potential mechanism of injury, quote unquote, and that leads them down the path of not understanding and applying a proper mechanism of treatment or correction.